Hello, you're listening to the Super Power You podcast. This is episode 75. I'm Lisa Betts-Lacroix, and my guest today is sexologist and author Francesca Gentille.
A truly healthy adult would be responsive versus reactive, would be collaborative versus controlling, would be revealing versus lying, withholding, manipulating the truth. And I started to distinguish this for myself, and I thought, oh, great, as I can distinguish it, then I can also start to be it.
Welcome to the Super Power You podcast, where we reveal the mental models and tactical skills needed to activate your inner superhero. And here's your host, Lisa Betts-Lacroix.
Hello, lovelies. Welcome to the Super Power You podcast. If you're here for the first time, please do subscribe on any podcast platform. I am so excited to introduce my guest for today's show. Now, I love all of my guests. I have some of the most incredible, interesting, fascinating, and articulate and bright guests on my show. But today's guest is something else, really. And our conversation was deep and rich, and it went on for a really long time because there were so many things that I wanted to talk with Francesca about. So I've broken the conversation up into two parts. And so next week will also be Francesca Gentille. So this week in episode 75, part 1, Francesca and I talk about healing childhood trauma and about the ways we can be limited by that trauma if we don't heal it. Francesca shares about her own experience on that healing path. And then we also talk about authenticity and showing up, because one of the things that's most amazing about Francesca, and one of the reasons I was first interested in her and following her, is because she really does bring herself fully to the world unapologetically. She talks about how it hasn't always been that way for her, and that practice is part of her healing. At one point in the conversation, she identifies this powerful truth, and that is that if we want to be truly seen and truly loved, we need to show up fully and to show ourselves authentically. Such a powerful idea. After that, we talk about dating and how dating can be a blessing, and the process that she shares, the 4-step process for sacred dating, can actually apply to so many aspects of relationship, whether you're dating, whether you're in a long-term relationship, whether it's with your kids, whether it's with new people you meet, even in the workplace. And so I think there's some powerful, powerful information in this model that she shares in our conversation. Next week's episode will be the continuation of our conversation. And in that episode, please do come back, because what we talk about is sacred BDSM and the ways that Francesca thinks about empowered aging, which if you're a regular listener, you'll know this is a topic close to my heart. But Francesca has some beautiful, nuanced gems of wisdom that she shares next week on that topic. So please, please, please don't miss it. Both topics, all the things we talk about next week are really, really interesting. And so subscribe to the show if you're not already, and be sure to come back next week for episode number 76, part 2 with Francesca Gentille. In the meantime, let's jump in and meet Francesca. Francesca Gentille is a certified clinical sexologist, quantum shaman, the co-author of The Marriage of Sex and Spirit, the radio host of Sex, Tantra and Kama Sutra, and the host of the popular Facebook Live series, The Conscious Bachelorette. She teaches on recovery from trauma, bridging sexual differences, relationship by design, enchanted dating, sacred sexuality, and therapeutic BDSM nationally and internationally. I want to offer a very warm welcome to you, Francesca Gentille. Welcome to the Super Power You podcast.
I am super delighted to be here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk with you. And I usually like to give a bit of context on how I connect with people, because so many of my guests are longtime friends, family members, just people I've known in my amazing communities for years. But with you, I came across you on Facebook, I think through mutual connection with Shantala Davis, I believe, and just was so struck by something you wrote that I started following you and then started watching your Facebook Lives and just was wowed by your, I'm going to say, by your breadth of knowledge and your authenticity and your integrity all playing out in worlds as wide and deep as the ones we mentioned in the bio. So that's sort of the context for my listeners of how we connected. And so let's just get into it.
Woohoo. What are we going to get into?
I don't know. Let's find out. So I always start my conversations with my guests, asking them to share something from their childhood that they think may have impacted who they've become and how they're showing up in the world today and, the impact that they're having right here and right now. And I'm wondering if anything comes to mind for you.
Wow, what a great place to start. I love it. Because, it's so much the foundation of who we are, even when we deny it, even when we're like, oh, I'm over my childhood, that thing, that's years ago. I'm grown up now. And I think one of the things that I discovered the most in my own healing journey was that even though I was, in my 20s or my 30s or 40s or beyond, is one day I discovered that there was still this little girl inside. When I saw her in therapy, I said to her, Honey, I'm so sorry. I didn't know until this moment that you were still back there. I thought that when I grew older, that you grew older with me. I thought all of me grew older at the same time. And I didn't realize that you were still trapped in the past, like reliving that over and over again. And now that I know that you're back there, I can try to figure out how to be the nurturing adult for you. And you don't have to trust me. It is my job to become trustworthy. And that was such a turning point in my healing journey. But why did I even have to have a healing journey? Goes back to, something like 60% of us were raised in families or environments with severe emotional, physical, sexual, and or spiritual abuse and trauma. And 96% of us were raised in families or environments that were dysfunctional, which means having missing functions. So that if my family was not affectionate, knowing what healthy affection is could be a missing function. If my family was very rageful, but they didn't allow the kids to have emotions, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, then a healthy relationship to emotions, I don't have that. Or if my family was very dominator, hierarchical, which is super common, it's my way or the highway. As long as you're under my roof, you're going to do it my way. That kind of very dominator model that says that the parents have all the information, anything the child feels or wants or desires or their limits or boundaries are inconsequential. They can't know better than their parents. And therefore the parents have all the power. That model is inherently abusive and very, 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 very common. And it doesn't teach us anything about healthy boundaries. It doesn't teach us anything about healthy consent. So no wonder when we're adults, we just either go into a dominator model of telling people what to do or grabbing for what we want or not knowing how to say no or not knowing how to negotiate because we were never taught anything healthy about that growing up. So I would definitely fall under normal, but also in the abusive category. And oddly enough, some things that could be abusive are still considered normal, like spanking and the belt, the hairbrush, the paddle. Some of my Latina friends, in warm countries, it's the flip-flop, take the mom taking off the flip-flop and hitting them with it. And people will laugh. They'll be like, my mom used to use the hairbrush. She used to use her flip-flop as if it's funny. Mm-hmm, and that laughter is a way to avoid the pain. I was yelled at and hit in a way that had me lose my capacity to cry in public. So it felt very, very unsafe to cry in front of people. To be able to cry, I would have to go into the bathroom and turn on the water. And then I also lost the ability to be angry because it was very unsafe to show any anger, any rebelliousness, any difference of opinion in my family. And so I literally disassociated from anger, and it took years to find my anger and then to have a healthy relationship with it. Sometimes if we've been stuffing it down for a long time, it can come out with these waves of justified rage. Now I get to be mad at men, or now I get to be mad at the man or the boss or the government, or now I get to be mad at whatever. We'll pick a cause and we'll start to just pour out this rage that goes all the way back to childhood of feeling powerless. And it took me a really long time to put together this concept that I still had a little girl inside me and that I was out of control with my emotions. And then to say, oh my God, age doesn't guarantee wisdom. My parents were getting older. Most parents get older, but that doesn't mean they actually grew up. So we have people that are old enough to have children, but that doesn't mean that they're engaging in their inner work.
They haven't gone back and healed their own childhood trauma, so they just create repeating dysfunction.
Right. And so they're either wounded kids or rebellious teens masquerading in adult bodies, acting out, trying to be powerful, but in fact, they're still powerless.
I do love how in your lives and in the way you communicate on your videos that you sometimes go right into the little girl and you talk with the voice and the facial expression. I just so love that. I'm like, oh man, it's like you really do embody whatever persona you're talking about, which I love. I'm very struck by the huge difference and like what seems like a sweeping chasm between the person you are now that I see and the level of wisdom and ability to articulate your process and be compassionate and be understanding and filled with love and just like so many layers of understanding and wisdom that I see in you, and the childhood that you've described. You're alluding to it now, but you've also described it in other places online. And so I'm just imagining that there have to be a lot of pivotal points along the journey. And I'm wondering if any of those come to mind.
Yeah, I would say a very pivotal point for me. I was somewhere around 20. I had just gotten to the point where I was in so much emotional pain that I was eating trays of brownies and boxes of cookies and quarts of ice cream. And I would just eat until it was physically painful in my body. And the moment that the physical pain would go down, I would start eating again because physical pain was easier for me to handle than the emotional pain. And yet the addiction, in my case, the addiction was compulsive overeating, had me hate myself. I'm hiding my food. I'm gaining weight. I'm physically in pain. I'm not able to maybe eat with other people or go out because I want to be home stuffing my face. And then I'm hating myself when I do it. And there was a point where I wanted to kill myself. And I was looking for a suicide prevention helpline. And what I actually found was Overeaters Anonymous. And I thought, oh my God, well, I can't seem to stop eating. I mean, I want to kill myself, but I can't seem to stop eating. So let me give them a call. And I actually got a person, and the person said at the end of the phone, they said, I can't say if these meetings are going to be right for you. 12-step is going to be right for you. But what I recommend is to go to at least 6 meetings. And if you don't feel like there's something there for you, and the meetings are like cheap or free, there's just like donate a couple bucks, or, if you don't have any money, don't donate anything at all. If you don't feel like there's something there for you, we'll gladly refund your misery. I laughed. I'm like, oh, okay. And when I went into the room, so also very common in cultures, this sense of family secrets. Don't tell people your dad lost his job. Don't tell people your brother's an alcoholic. Don't tell that I sneak into your room at night. Don't tell, don't tell, don't tell. And also as children, we're often little truth seekers. We understand that people are lying when they say, I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. Or, of course, I love your mother or your father. And you're feeling all these other energies. We have mirror neurons. We're picking up these other communications that are unspoken. And especially as a child, for many of us, that's crazy making. I think it's still crazy making as an adult, but it's very crazy making as a child. So when I walked into these rooms, it was the first time that I heard people speaking the truth, like that there was an alignment or an integrity between what was coming out of their mouths and what my mirror neurons were picking up. If somebody said, I'm in so much pain, I can't stop eating, I hate myself. When I was a child, I was molested and that's when I started eating, or whatever. When they were saying whatever they were saying, I felt the truth of that resonance. It's like I was able to take a breath for the first time. And in the first meeting, when I heard that the cause of our addictive behavior is emotional pain, the addiction itself on some level, whether it's behavioral or substance oriented, is always physical. And that the cure was spiritual. Even though at the time I wasn't particularly spiritual, it felt right to me.
Yeah.
It felt right to me. So that was a big turning point. And, for our listeners, it's like you could be addicted to cleaning, shopping, working out, sex and love. That was another 12-step that I went through for sex and love addiction, my heroine. Just lust is not enough for me. Just love is not enough for me. But you put that I'm in love with you and I lust you together, and that's my heroine. And I want more of you, baby, baby, baby. Let me like snort your pheromones. I can't get enough of you until the drugs wear off. And then I'm bored, moving on. And you've betrayed me, by the way. You've betrayed me because I thought you were going to be the drug that never dropped. You were going to be the high that went on forever. And when you're not, then I would go on to find my next fix. So like definitely the 20s, I would say, was like a big turning point.
Yeah. Interestingly, OA was also my introduction to 12-step. It was somewhat of a blip or at least a darker part of the challenge of food. And that was also my entry. I moved to LA and I'd left a relationship, and eating was just where I just sunk into it. And I felt all that feeling of shame and difficulty and out of controlness with it. And so I went to some OA meetings in Los Angeles, and I had a very similar experience to what you described, in that it just felt like such deep connection and realness and a sense of self and opportunity. And I didn't really feel like eating was a very, very deep issue for me. It was, I would say in my life, it's been omnipresent, just a kind of ubiquitous issue. But just the exposure to the power of 12-step programs was amazing. And I thought, wow, 12-step programs and the information and the access available through them should be available to everyone. So powerful.
First, I didn't know you went to 12-step in LA. I did too.
Really?
So it was right after I graduated from college. I moved to Los Angeles for a year. And so I really did a lot of the deep beginnings of my work in 12-step in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Mine was 1995, 96. I was there.
Mine was earlier. And I actually loved being in the rooms with people that were bulimic, so throwing up after eating, anorexic, not allowing themselves to eat, and recognizing that all of us were so similar.
Yeah.
That regardless of what weight our body was carrying, and regardless of how we were out of control about our relationship to food, that we were out of control. And we did not have a right relationship, a balanced relationship with our thoughts, our emotions, our food, or our relatedness to life itself. And yeah, super powerful. I would agree. Yeah, that's so interesting.
I know. We were destined to meet at some point, Francesca.
Yeah. And then I would say to our listeners that codependency is a really common compulsive thought pattern. I'm going to save people. I'm going to enable them. If you say things like everyone around me has so much drama, and I'm always, I'm the go-to person. My friends are always calling me in the middle of the night with all of their issues. And my friends who are like losing their jobs or having issues, show up on my couch. Or if your sense is you're being drained by the people around you and that you're having a tendency to overgive, chances are you are on the codependent scale. And there's a 12-step for that too.
Yeah. The thing I love about you're bringing that piece up, the codependency piece, is like food, it's a complicated one because it's not one you can just step away from and ignore forever. Like food, we need it to survive. And the Achilles heel is we may be using it in unhealthy ways. And I think the same thing is with if you're someone who's skilled at and inclined towards and able to contribute to supporting other people. I mean, that's a beautiful gift and a beautiful ability, but it can fall into that Achilles heel side of becoming codependent too. So I think they're similar in that way, unlike say alcohol, which you can say, okay, I'm just going to walk away from this altogether.
It's funny you should mention that because the same is true for sex and love addiction.
Right.
Because, for most people, it's not healthy to just say, I'm not going to have any relationships. I'm not going to have any sexuality. For most human beings would actually be unhealthy.
Right.
And so far, all of my addictions are things that I can't go cold turkey with. I have to find a right relationship with, and that right relationship is daily and moment to moment. So I could binge on a carrot. Do I have my favorite binge foods? Sure. But if I'm really emotionally out of control, I could binge on celery. I could binge on anything because it's this compulsion away from my pain, to kind of be like, I need something to take away this pain rather than leaning into the pain. I used to say I have a broken coper. Other people seem to know how to cope with, losing jobs or being rejected or the ups and downs of life. Other people seem to be able to cope, to work with it in some way. And when these things happen to me, my experience used to be I fall apart. I fall apart. I feel so much pain. I feel like I have to turn to something so that I can feel even, get to work or stay alive the next day.
Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex.
Sex.
Because your skill set, your primary focus, what you're really an expert in is right relationship, sex, love, all of the things surrounding that, right? And you're a clinical sexologist. So maybe you can start by sharing with my listeners, what exactly is a clinical sexologist?
So good. So good. Oh, I just love talking with you. Clinical sexologist is an expert in sex. I mean, to be a certified clinical sexologist, this is somebody who has training. They've studied the body, about developmental stages in aging, something about hormones, something about some of the possible sexual challenges like pain during sex or inability to have an orgasm or premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction.
So the physical aspects of sex.
The physical aspects, but also the emotional. Usually a clinical sexologist will have some information as well. And for those of you who are thinking, wow, I need one of these, always look at someone's bio, look at their training. Most clinicians will offer you a free consult or a discounted consult, so you can get a sense, is this person really a match for you? And now a warning, quality may vary. And psychotherapists are not trained in sexuality. Someone could be a marriage and family therapist and have had one semester, a few classes in a little bit about sexuality. They are not trained. So here they are working with marriage issues, couples issues, and they have nothing to say about sexuality.
Right.
And the same is true for doctors and nurses. Doctors and nurses are not trained in sexuality. And sex coaches often have some training in sexuality. Maybe they'll have a little training in Tantra. But for our listening audience, you really want to, when somebody says they're a sex something, they're a tantric or a tantrika, they're a sexual healer, they're a sex therapist, they're a sexologist, they're a somatic sexologist, they're, whatever they call themselves, look at their resume or curriculum vitae, have a conversation. Where did you get trained? What do you think your specialties are? Because really, quality may vary. Especially in the coaching field, people can call themselves anything. And there's no standard. Mm-hmm. So someone could call themselves a sex coach just because they want to.
Right.
And not because they actually have foundational training.
Well, that's a perfect lead into what are your what are your specialties in sexology?
My specialties in sexology are bridging sexual differences. So I find that one of the main issues that couples present with is one has a higher libido than the other, could be a main issue. They've lost their libido or one person has lost it. They have different erotic templates. So what they think of as delicious sex or fantasies, they may have judgments about the other person's erotic template, the other person's fantasy. At a couple where 11 years into the marriage, she discovered in a writing exercise in university that she was submissive. And she's like, honey, I'm submissive. And he's like, oh, what? What does that mean? She's like, this is so much a part of me. I want to fulfill this. And then his response was, but I'm not dominant. Mm-hmm. And now this beautiful couple that otherwise had a great relationship is really facing something kind of traumatic and disconnective. But I was able to support him to discover when he said, I'm not that. What did he mean? Mm-hmm. What was he afraid of? And what did she actually mean when she said she was submissive? And I was able to find places of bridging between them and give them resources. And now they're still married and they have a baby. And, so bridging sexual differences, recovery from trauma. Mm-hmm. So trauma is emotional, the way we were talked to, shamed, denigrated, yelled at, neglect of encouraging words. Those are all traumas. Trauma could be physical, being hit, being locked into something, being tied down, being slapped. It could also be neglect of affection is also a trauma. And I mean, those are just some of it. Mm-hmm. There's a huge range of emotional trauma behavior and emotional, verbal, and physical. And then sexual trauma includes not only being touched or having someone, being forced to touch someone else, it means being coerced into watching sexuality. It could be coerced or manipulated into just doing anything erotically that you don't want to. And something very confusing for people is the body's kind of a mechanism. People can have orgasms when they're being raped. People can, somebody can get hard. A man can get hard when somebody's giving him oral sex, even if that's not the gender that he normally would want, because the body's just responding. And then it can be very confusing.
Right.
It's like, why did I have an orgasm? Why did I get hard? Am I gay? Did I want it? And then the perpetrator will often say, you want it. You wanted it.
And that's
a lie.
natural, and that's also a natural response to most victims anyway, is to self-blame. So
it's a self-blame.
Yeah.
And, I want to say to all people who've been perpetrated sexually, it was not your fault. It didn't matter what you were wearing. It didn't matter what the perpetrator told you. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. It didn't matter.
You responded, yeah, got it.
Yeah. If your body responded, it didn't matter.
So important.
If your being was saying no, if there's any power differential, even if you were incapable of saying no, because sometimes as a child or, if you're drunk or whatever, you're incapable of saying no, or your boss, you feel incapable of saying no, you're still not at fault, because they have their responsibility is to protect and care for you. And they failed.
Yeah. So important.
So important. And then one of the things I also want to separate out for people is one of my clients, her father had sex with her when she was 12. And when she told me about it, my response was, what I think I hear you saying is that felt very, on some level, also felt special to you because that was the only time that you actually felt he loved you. And she said, yes. Mm-hmm. And I said, I want to just hold that very tenderly for that 12-year-old that was so neglected by her dad in most circumstances, that he was so missing, that the time that he showed up and had sex with her is still a time that in some way she holds precious, because at least he was there. At least he was holding her. And I think he might have even said that one time that he said he loved her. Now, did this create a lot of trauma for her in the rest of her relationships? Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Yeah.
But on the other hand, she said, you're the only therapist that ever heard me, that ever heard that this was a time that I felt loved. And I said, yeah, honey. And I want to hold that really tenderly for that little girl. Mm-hmm. And in a healthy family, you would have been given so much more than that. Like, yes, was that like his best guess of how to show you he loved you? Yes. Mm-hmm. Did he love you? Yes. And did he still fail in his role as a parent to protect you? Yes. But it doesn't mean he didn't love you. I'm convinced that most parents absolutely love us.
Right.
And they love us to the best of their ability. If they were more capable of loving us in a healthy way, they would have done it.
Yes.
But just because they loved us, or just because they even said that they loved us, or we believe that they loved us, doesn't mean that the way they treated us wasn't abusive or traumatic.
We are so relational. Like, we are so innately needing and desiring of connection and love and connectedness. And, I think so many times we will give up something unknowingly, unconsciously, or to have that connection and relationship and love.
Yeah. And it becomes, depending on the trauma in childhood, it can become normal to get scraps of love instead of healthy love. It can become normal to overgive to get love. It's like there's these patterns of behavior that become normalized. And not everything that's faced can be changed, healed, or transformed, but we can't really heal it if we've never faced it. So, I find that it's so important. For me, it's been very important to find the courage to go back and really face the bad news. And was there good news? I mean, every moment of every day was not torture. Every moment of every day was not awful. My mom was an amazing cook. My dad was very charming. There were wonderful moments or wonderful times. Absolutely. And did my mother tie me to the bed when I was 2.5 years old to try to get me to stop sucking my thumb? Yeah. And was that abusive? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And was she bipolar? And would she yell at me and swear at me and call me names for 25, 35, 45 minutes? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And was that abusive? Yeah. And it doesn't mean she was never a good person, or that I didn't also learn some loving things from her. I'm 61 or 60 fun, as I like to say. And I keep going back to face another memory and go, okay, and now it's time to face that one. And now it's time to heal that one.
Yeah, I so appreciate the authenticity and the realness and the personal part of your own journey that you bring to your work. I think it creates so much space for people and so much connection. And I think it's just such a profound aspect of the work that you do. And I just want to really honor that courage and that commitment that you hold and that space that you create.
I'm going to breathe that in. Feels so good. Thank you for saying that. And it's been huge, because I was told don't tell, don't tell, don't tell, don't air your dirty laundry. And I really internalized that to be loved meant that I had to be likable, meant that I had to represent as the pretty, happy, smiley girl. And I remember times in my life where I always had a smile on my face, but it felt like it was killing me because it was the pretty girl wanting to be liked smile, hiding pain that I was really in. And I have to tell you that I still can feel this fear, like every time I reveal something that either I haven't revealed before or maybe I don't reveal often, there's this kind of inside me, like, is this the time that I'm going to be rejected and reviled? Is this the time that everything's going to come crashing down?
Yeah.
And now I'm going to be alone and unloved. And just like I was taught as a child, all the bad things will happen because I've revealed something.
Yeah.
And that can still be in the background.
I feel that is such a common experience. And I see it around me so much now as there's this rising up of authenticity and vulnerability in our culture right now. And as that grows and becomes more imbued with power and beauty and connection, it equally comes up this fear that you're talking about. And I see it in myself and I see it in so many people that it's just part of the nature, part of the other side of the coin of having the courage to reveal that wounded child, that delicate being inside of us that wants to be loved comes up at the same time. I just see you as such a bridger of seeming opposite things, and so I love that that's something that you are presencing in your work and in our conversation, is because I think that anybody who's showing up to share their voice and share their vision and be what the impact is they're meant to bring is going to have that fear. And I think presencing it, I think it's just such an important thing to acknowledge, is that if you are bringing yourself, you're going to feel some fear because we are vulnerable, delicate beings.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that and acknowledging that, and for our listeners, hey, if you're feeling terrified about revealing yourself, that's like completely normal.
Exactly.
Welcome to this journey and invitation towards authenticity. Yeah. And I can tell you that, is there a risk in being authentic that some people won't like us, that we might be rejected? At times I have come forward to reveal the truth and have lost my family, or lost a job, or lost a relationship. But I can tell you that on the other side, I've always found me, and that I'm happier today. And I would do it again. I would do it again because I love me. I love me. There was a point in my life, I don't think I could have said that at all. I was afraid to face who I was, darkness and light. I was afraid of the darkness. It was like, oh my God, back there, I know there's these terrible, monstrous parts of me, and I'm afraid to face them. They're completely unlovable. And so I was running away from me and my darkness. And I was hoping that you would save me from how much I hated myself. And then I was lying to try to get you to love me, and which was just proving to me how unlovable I was. I mean, it was just such a pit.
Oh my gosh. And how common is that in our culture, right? How many people think we're collectively susceptible to that?
Yeah. And then when I started to turn that around and I was just kind of shaking, and I want to say this once again to our listeners, is pick safe places. So when I started, I think the first place was 12-step. Because they have rules and agreements of anonymity. There's a culture of, we're here to help each other reveal. We're only as sick as our secrets. So I really had assessed after a few meetings that this was a safe place to start to reveal some of my deepest pain. There's some meetings where you have like a minute or so to share. I used to get up and just cry because remember, I used to cry in the bathroom with the water running.
Right.
So it was such a big deal for me to let people see my tears. Oh, that was so healing to be able to be in a room to reveal what I had never revealed and feel safe. And then in 12-step, you also do what's called a 4th-step inventory, where you start to face your darkness, and then you eventually share it with another person that you assess to be safe. I have trust issues. It took me 2 years to write it and 2 years to find someone safe enough to share it with. But that was such a turning point for me when I finally did take my deepest, darkest secrets from that time. Like, this is where I stole, or this is where I lied, or at the time I was afraid that I might be gay. And I've since done beautiful work with Body Electric Institute to really go deep into, like, where am I on the Kinsey scale from heterosexual to homosexual, and find my spot and feel comfortable with it. But there was a point where I was just so unsure, and that was another thing I was afraid to face. So as I found these safe places, and therapy can be a safe places and safe people to reveal with, the more I reveal, the more I tell myself I'm lovable. And recently I went through something on Facebook where I revealed something and there was a big kerfluffle, and the way that I was wanting to communicate didn't get received in the way that I would have wanted it to be received. And I think the people who were wanting to communicate with me didn't maybe feel heard. And there was a point where we were, all triggered. And it was definitely my little girl that was triggered. And I felt like I was trapped with my abusive mother yelling at me. It was how the little girl felt. I'm not saying that that's what they were doing.
Right.
I'm sure I felt like something to them. And oh my God, for like 3 days, I was in the dark crying. I canceled all my appointments because my little girl inside was so activated. And it took me a good week or so to just self-soothe, to sit with her, to get some therapy and mentorship, eventually to come back to center. And where I am today is like, oh, yeah, they were probably triggered too. And I love me.
Yeah. And I saw that. I watched that, and it was beautiful. And what an inspiration to say, hey, when you get triggered, you can actually retreat and say, now I have a boundary and I need to go in and heal and hold myself and parent myself. I think it's a beautiful example, and we should all have the ability to recognize when we're needing self-nurturing and feel the freedom and the ability to create it.
I think this is a big one. I want to highlight this for those who are listening. The ability to take a pause, a time out, to say, I'm going to step away from this for self-care. My boundaries are for me, not against you. I'm going to step away from this conversation. I'm starting to feel escalated. I'm going to step away is so important. And it is adult, because as a child, we were trapped, literally and physically trapped. There was nowhere to go. It was life or death to please our caregivers. And we had to sit there and take it, whatever it was, whether that was emotional, physical, sexual, and or spiritual abuse and trauma. We had to sit there and take it. And I want to invite, for those that are listening, that anytime we feel trapped and powerless, unless someone has literally locked the door, unless someone has literally chained us down, because that can happen, unless we are physically, literally trapped, if we're feeling trapped and powerless, we've been kidnapped by a younger child self. So there I was in public on Facebook having this conversation with people when suddenly I felt trapped. And, someone might have said, you can't leave this conversation. You can't delete this conversation, or we think you're a bad person. I had somebody say, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. And oh my God, the little girl in me was like, she said she wasn't going to be my friend anymore. And then I'm feeling like I'm trapped on Facebook. It's like Facebook has now become a prison without a key, and I can't get out. And it took a minute. It took whatever it took to kind of go, oh, wait, I'm an adult. I'm an adult and I'm free. They actually have no power over me. I mean, they can say whatever they want, and they might not like me, and they can choose for their own boundaries to not be my friend, because that's what they need to do for self-care. But I'm actually free.
I want to talk about the Conscious Bachelorette because I think that is such a beautiful example of living out loud. I really do believe that there's some power from those people who have the guts and who've done the work, the power that gives, and you're such a great example of it, to live out loud fully in such an authentic and deep way. I just think it's such a gift to the world. And I think the Conscious Bachelorette is such a great example. And I want to say that the thing that's profoundly impacted me, and I mentioned this to you, I think, in one of our private conversations on Facebook, but the idea that we can show up and look to connect with people, and I extend this from dating, it's any kind of interaction with another person, right? Show up in such a way that we can, as you say, be a blessing, that our interaction can be a blessing to them. And I would just extend that to say that just there's something that I can give or contribute, even as I'm holding my own boundaries and my own need for reciprocity. That has been such a game changer for me in thinking about how I interact with people in any kind of interaction with someone new, with someone that I know. And yeah, it's just beautiful. And so maybe you can just talk about how the Conscious Bachelorette came about, what it's like and where you're going with it.
I adore you. You're such a sweetheart. Yeah. So it's really only been in the last few years that I started to be in this inquiry about what does a mature, centered, healthy adult look like? And I don't think that I was raised by one. And I'm not sure I've seen one. So I started to be on what I call the hunt, the hunt for the mature, centered adult. Like, what would it look like? What would it sound like? And I started to define it for myself as that, a truly healthy adult would be responsive versus reactive, would be collaborative versus controlling, would be revealing versus lying, withholding, manipulating the truth. And I started to distinguish this for myself. And I thought, oh, great. As I can distinguish it, then I can also start to be it. And as I was looking at this, I was also coaching people in their dating lives. And I was seeing a lot of mess. So I would ask, my clients, did you ask him what he wants from a relationship? No. Did you reveal what you want from a relationship? No. Did you ask him if he's seeing anyone else? No. Did you let him know that you're seeing anyone else? No. Did you ask him if he's, straight or bi, or, did you ask him what some of his fantasies are? No. And, this is, maybe you're not asking all of this on a first date, but, over several dates, or they're already lovers or whatever. Sometimes this was going on for months. And I started to think, what are people talking about?
Right.
What are they talking about on their dates? And I remember saying to one of my clients and mentees, she said, I'm afraid to find out the truth. And I said, do you realize that not knowing the truth will not protect you from the truth? Not knowing that he has a partner, a wife, whatever, not knowing that he's not taking this seriously will not protect you from this. Not knowing that somebody has AIDS will not protect you from, not getting AIDS. And so as I was recognizing this, I was going back into the dating field, and I saw that I was inviting myself to really be a standard, as you so beautifully put it, like, how could I date as a blessing? And the old model of dating sounds like this. Are you good enough for me? Mm-hmm. Am I good enough for you? Am I attracted to you? Are you attracted to me? And if I'm dating with this kind of assessment lens on, there's a really good chance that I'm not going to make it to your standards, or you're not going to make it to mine. And the risk is very high. The risk is we're going to fail and we're going to be rejected, which leads to lying, withholding, and manipulating information, because I really, really want a relationship, or I really, really want sex, or some combination thereof. And I'm afraid to fail or be rejected or not get the goodie. And I thought that, as I started to date, I'm like, oh God, this sucks. So how can I take it out of that model? And so the model I put it in was healthy.
Whoa.
What if this was healthy? And then, I really believe in the sacred. What if I did this sacred? And what I saw is that I could date with the 4 C's. I call them the 4 C's of either healthy dating or sacred dating. And the first C is courage. Having the courage to actually respond to the email, respond to the text or whatever. It takes courage to even be on a dating site or to say hello to somebody. Mm-hmm. And then the courage leads to compassion, because it's not only courageous for me, it's courageous for the other person to respond to my text, to reach out to me, to show up on the date. This is also courageous. So let me have compassion for them. and let me have compassion for their confusion and their suffering, just like I have confusion and suffering in all of this. And then the third C is curiosity. Who are you? Who are you? Tell me something. What's important in your life right now? What moves you? How would you want to be remembered? If you had one way to change the world in your lifetime, one wish, what would it be? And this leads to the fourth C, which is contribution. Human beings long to be seen, felt, and heard. They long to matter. This is from nonviolent communication research of Marshall Rosenberg, that we long to matter. We long to be seen and heard. And so contribution can be spending that tea date or that dinner date. That's the only time I spend with that person. If I hear them beneath their words, if I see them beneath their actions, if I reflect what they are telling me back to them in a way that helps them understand and hear themselves, that is a contribution. And I have now been a blessing. And whether or not I have a second date with that person, or a third or a fifth or a lifetime, I can walk away from that date feeling successful because I have interacted in a way that I'm proud of and I've contributed to another life.
Oh my gosh. I adore you. There is such a deep beauty and contribution to that model. And I'm just kind of in awe of the graciousness with which you articulate it and also with which you model it. And I think if we took that model and applied it to not only our dating interactions, but to all of our interactions with strangers and friends and loved ones and family, what a different world we'd have. So thank you for that. Because there's so much in our world, in our culture, whether it's with dating or with family or with partnered relationships, having to do with expectation. And I think it removes the expectation. It removes the fact that it should be something. It should be a particular thing. And instead it puts the emphasis on, like you say, the healthiness or the beauty of the potential interaction, regardless of where it goes. But listen, it is the Superpower You podcast. And so we cannot end our conversation without talking about your superpower. And for context, the way I describe a superpower to my guests is it's that skill set or that strength that has been with you your entire life, no matter the age or the stage, and regardless of what type of work you've been doing or what type of, what type of model you're playing in, but it's been with you all the time. And it's so natural to you that it's like the air you breathe or the water you swim in. But to other people, it looks like you're scaling a vertical hill. And so for many people, they don't necessarily know their superpower unless it's been reflected back to them by others. Sometimes we get at it. Sometimes I have a sense of it, but I always like to start by asking my guests if you have a sense with that context of your superpower.
I would say, and feel free to tell me what you think mine is too.
Yeah.
But I would say that, I think I might have more than one. Is one of them is bridging differences.
Bingo. That's what I was going to say too.
And explaining, and that could be explaining the wild to the conservative, explaining the conservative to the wild. I have actually worked in interracial relations when I was, clearly I need to catch up on that. But, I for many years I was, working in cultural diversity and would be, helping to bridge those different perspectives and different lives, bridging, the masculine to the feminine. So I've been doing that for my mom and dad since I was a child. Dad, when you say this, do you actually mean this? Mom, dad actually means this. And when mom says this, she actually means this other thing. Isn't that correct, Mom? So being able to hear people beneath their words and even explain them to themselves.
Well, and of course, the obvious, right, of bridging the physical and the spirit world, bridging, sacredness with, sexuality, which are not necessarily polar opposites, but I think that they're often put on separate sides of the same thing. So yeah, I absolutely see you as someone who is a bridger. And there's something for me about the ability to be articulate and to verbally express that which is in some ways ineffable. And I see that as a bridge too. It's like you're bridging the abstract with the language that goes with it that elaborates on it. That's another bridge to me. Yeah, I absolutely see you as as someone who's able to marry seeming opposing forces and to bring them higher through the marrying of them, that the bridging actually raises the stakes and raises the importance of and raises the power.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that and for being someone who sees and honors that divine spark and that divine superpower, we might say that divine calling in other people.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so I want to thank you so much for your time. But before we wrap up, could you please share with my listeners how they can follow you, where they can find you, how they can explore the possibility of working with you, what type of offerings you have coming up, just anything, because I know that after hearing this conversation, people are going to be wanting to know how they can get some of this magic.
Aw, thank you, sweetheart. Oh, I want to say to our listeners that you can have a free hour consult. Just say that you heard it here and put gift session in an email to me. That is to relationshipdiva@gmail.com. That's relationshipdiva@gmail.com. And I'm Francesca, Francesca. Gentille, Gen, G as in good, Entille. And you can Google me for my Facebook. If you're friending me, please send a note as well. And also my website, francescagentille.com. And I've got resources there and videos there and book recommendations there and articles there. And it's really my mission is to create a world of inner peace and harmonious relationships in which sexuality is experienced as a blessing. And I just love to do whatever I can to support individuals, couples, and moresomes to live like that. So once again, free gift for our listeners. And I'm a one-woman business, so I can get super busy. If you email me and don't hear back from me, it's not against you in any way. Just ping me again, because when I'm with clients or on an interview or something else, I'm not at my computer, and sometimes I can miss the emails that come in, but you're in my heart and I'm here to support you.
And I will include all of those links that Francesca mentioned in the show notes. So I just want to say thank you so much. This conversation has been a blessing to me, and I know it has been to so many of my listeners as well. So I want to thank you deeply and gratefully for the work that you're doing in the world and for the healing that you're bringing to so many people into the planet. And thank you for spending the time here with me today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Big mwah to you, Lisa.
Okay, what did I tell you? Is that an amazing, wise, deep woman? I'm so thrilled to have gotten to meet Francesca since we recorded the episode, and I feel like we were meant to be friends. So I'm thrilled to have gotten to know Francesca a little more, and I'm so happy to be able to have brought some of her wisdom to you. Please do come back next week when we talk about sacred BDSM and empowered aging and so much more. Until then, I'm sending you big love. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for listening to the Super Power You podcast. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes and get more information at lisabl.com.